What's the science behind it? Why did it tear after it got wet? Nobody doing any science-related degrees here?
It was damaged, you could say.
The paper wasn't damaged. Why does wet paper tear? Does anyone know how paper is made? Okay, so the way paper is made, we'll add a segue here. The way paper is made is you take wood pulp. Sometimes you can use cotton for linen, because of the linen pages, but typical paper is made from wood pulp. You mash it down, and then you compress. You mix it with water, so it turns into mush, and then you strain it, and then you flatten it down, and then you let it dry, and voila, you have paper. So the reason wet paper tears and eventually disintegrates is because you had mixed it with water, so you're basically remixing it with water, so it gets soggy. Those bonds now start to separate, and it doesn't have the regular integrity, so wet paper tears. Okay? Now, it's basic science, right? It's always going to happen. The way you make paper is the way you unmake paper. Okay? So one thing falls and another thing falls apart. Now, the reality is, between men and women, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala designed us to be attracted to each other. Okay? That's the way we're designed. Okay? Men and women, they're attracted to each other. And the reality is also that when it comes to dating somebody, right, if we're going to go out and say, there's someone I want to date, we're not picking somebody that we're not attracted to. Right? Nobody goes, oh man, I got this hot date with this super ugly person. I can't wait to go. They're a horrible person. I can't wait to go have a miserable time tonight. Right? We don't. We don't pick the person that we're not attracted to. So when you're going out on a date, or you're telling yourself some excuse as to why you're meeting up with this person, even if you don't want to officially call it a date, right? Because we like word games. So no, I wasn't dating, brother. I was just meeting the sister to help her with her homework at the library for 6 hours. And yeah, we actually didn't get around to the homework, but you know, subhanAllah, she's so amazing and wonderful. And yeah, mashallah, brother. Yeah. We know that you weren't there to help her with her homework. And no, it wasn't a date, quote unquote, but of course it was a date, because we define a date as sitting down one-on-one. Dinner doesn't have to be involved, but getting to know somebody who we have a romantic attachment to, or would like to. I.e. what? It's somebody that we're attracted to, somebody that we like, that we have some sense in our heart, some feeling that, hey, this person's a possibility, this is someone I'd like to get to know. And because Allah created us to be attracted to one another, the reality is that the more we sit together, the more those bonds start to come between us. Okay? So we may say, I'm the tough paper, I'm not going to tear, I can go hang out with girls and be on dates with them, but I'm not going to be affected, and I'm going to stay away from all of the haram, and I'm never going to take things too far. But just like this paper, maybe you're not the cheap notebook paper, maybe you're the heavier 20-pound paper. Or maybe you're Superman, you say, I'm cardboard, brother. But guess what? Even cardboard, sitting in the water long enough, falls apart. Okay? And the reality is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put rules for us so that we guard ourselves, so that we maintain our integrity, so that our reputations are guarded, so that our hearts are guarded. Because the more you expose yourself to people, and you might think, oh, it was fun. I enjoyed it. Of course you did. You were designed to enjoy it. But the more of those relationships that you have and then lose, and then have and then lose, it does something to your heart. It's like the creases on the page. And eventually, no matter how well-intentioned you are, you're going to rip. You're going to tear, because that's how Allah made us. It's chemistry. When you're sitting with somebody that you're very attracted to, you keep finding excuses. So initially, yeah, you're just fine with dinner and we just had a conversation. But guess how many of those dates you'd want to go on with the girl's father present? Right? Pretty soon you'd be like, hey, does your dad have to come? Maybe your dad will have an emergency and I'll be able to stay. What time is your dad leaving? How about I meet you there early? Why? Because now you realize her dad's getting in the way. Because you want things to go, forward, but you don't dare because her father's sitting there. So then you start to feel that sense of, man, I wish he wasn't around. because that's how things are designed within us. All right? And so when we talk about this idea of dating, when I would say there's no dating in Islam, as we talk about this common sense of dating, right, this is why. Because it ultimately begins to damage reputations. It starts to wear down our hearts. It starts to break us down. Okay? And even the most well-meaning, best-intentioned people can fall into error this way. Right? And the rules of Islam are designed to help protect us from ourselves. So it's not even that, oh, you had bad intentions, you're going out trying to do something. But we're human beings. And we're created this way, to be attracted to each other. And so Allah sets rules so that we guard ourselves. Okay? So it prevents those things from happening. Now, if the question becomes then, well, how do you know who you want to marry? Okay, because that tends to be the automatic thing. Well, how am I supposed to know if I want to marry the person if I don't get to know them? Well, we have those kind of dates where the girl's father comes along. And when you're tired of the girl's dad being there, maybe that's the time you need to propose marriage. Because you're saying, now I know you well enough, I want to get to know you better. Great. Do it under the auspice of marriage. Right? And this is how we have a chance to get to know each other. You say, well, how did I get to know them initially? Okay. You guys are here, you're on campus together, you may see each other at the masjid, you see each other out and about. You have some idea of who you're potentially interested in. The reality is all of us know within a few minutes of meeting somebody whether they're a potential yes or a no. Right? Don't we all know the no's? People, you meet them, and like within 1 minute after meeting somebody, I could ask, would you be interested in marrying that person? The ones that are no's, you know right away, like, nope, pass. Right? It doesn't mean you would never change your mind on a no, but you have an initial sense of, no, that would be a no. Or, it's a possibility, or maybe even a yeah, very strong possibility. But we have to kind of go from that standpoint. Yes?
So what if the person is different in front of the dad, other than if the dad goes away and you marry them, or the person is different?
So, did you all hear that question? So he said, what happens if you're getting to know them while the dad is there, but then when the dad, is gone and you marry them, now they turn out to be a different person. So, in that dad scenario, right, it doesn't mean that the dad necessarily, for example, has to be at the table with you all the time. Okay? So once things have kind of progressed a little bit, you determine, yeah, this person might be a good candidate for marriage. We both think that, yeah, there's a good possibility. You can have a private conversation with them while the dad is, for example, maybe he's in the room, or maybe you're over at their house, parents are in the next room, you're sitting down. You can have those, private conversations that are important to have because there are things you need to know about each other, but not necessarily, her parents don't necessarily need to know those things. So that's your opportunity to find out. Again, reputation is so protected, the parents can walk in the room any minute, and if you were to say something later on, the parents would be like, no, we were there at home, nothing happened. So reputations on both sides are protected, and you still have that time and that space to have a private conversation to talk about things that are meaningful for you guys to make a decision for each other. Now, if somebody's just posing and they're trying to fool somebody, and unfortunately some people do, but that's the hard knocks of life. If you dated them, it would be the exact same thing. They would be fooling you until they got you to a point where they trusted you enough and they got whatever it was they were trying to get out of you. All right. Any other questions on it? Because those are like the broad strokes of things. So any other specifics? Yes.
So we have so let's say they're interested in each other. They really see future together. And let's say the family was here. They're attracted to each other. They're romantically ready, but then there's the aspect of marriage of how much requirements there is and how hard culture makes it for young people to get married. You have to be financially stable. You have to be ready to take care of a whole family, open a house, open this and this and that, and then like it's kind of like society makes it hard to I'm not sure. But it makes it hard to go with the halal way because they put all these titles of what
Yeah.
is marriage.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. You know, and it is something that we try to talk to the families about and so forth, which is don't make it so difficult for your children to get married. Because you're right, in many cases they really shut down the avenues of getting married. You know, especially in some countries. For example, you know, my father's from Egypt, and I know in Egypt a lot of times they, you know, the parents are setting a high dowry and they insist you have to have the apartment and everything. Well, it's not economically, you know, possible for a lot of people, right? So they end up blocking doors, and that's a societal problem, and it's a big problem. What I do say to parents that I can talk with though is that, look, if your children are coming to you saying that they want to get married, you should do everything you can to facilitate it because they're trying to pursue a halal means of doing things. Now, if your father, as he is right now, is willing to pay for your school and pay for your room and board and lodging while you're going through college, and you know your father is the same, he's willing to pay for school and room and board and everything while you're going through, then we tell the parents, look, both of your kids are in college, you're both sets of parents were willing to pay for, you know, your expenses and so forth. You know, let your children get married. There's an understanding that he's in college getting a degree because he's going to get a job. So he's going to be able to provide for your daughter, which is a valid concern, right? As a father, yeah, I want to make sure that whoever marries my daughters knows that he can take care of them, right? So I don't want a professional bum. Someone's going to say, yeah, dear, you go to work and I'm going to sit home and collect food stamps, right? I want to know that whoever's going to come to marry my daughters has the ability to support them. That being said, I have to also have enough vision to say, okay, well, yeah, my daughter is in school now and she's going to be for 2 more years and I'm supporting her. And if somebody, if there's that, you know, potential match that's there, okay. So if his dad supports him and I support my daughter, let's support the 2 of them, let them be married in a halal way. And then he's going to get his job and then they take over, you know, their payments and so forth. Now, you're right, culturally, it's difficult. Some parents are like, no, he has to have X, Y, Z. You know, and we have to come to those parents and say, look, don't make things difficult. You're going to answer to Allah for that, right? As parents, you say you are accountable for the situation that you're putting your own children in. So don't make things difficult for them. Don't push them to even consider the haram because you're making life so difficult for them. You know, if they found, look, here's a good person, they have good deen, they have good character, they get along well, right? They have all these important aspects, right? And by the way, it is a lot of aspects. One reason why we see divorce happening so often these days, I think, is because too many times we don't consider all the different aspects that are important to have in between people, right? Too many times it's, oh, well, they were just very religious, so that's it, I'm good. Yeah, that's a good quality, but it's not the only important quality. Oh, they had a great sense of humor. Okay, that's good, alhamdulillah, but that's not the only quality. They're good looking. Yeah, that comes and goes. But again, we need to have like a wide variety of combination of things, of personality, of how we get along, of deen and goals in life, and but there's a lot of different aspects of things that need to go into choosing the right person, by the way, right? So, you know, don't be simplistic and think, well, they had this one thing, that's great, and then everything else I'll just, yeah. Okay, you've got one thing, but they need to have a multitude of things. We never know who the perfect person is, but we can say, well, they've got, you know, 5 out of 8 things that are very important to me. Okay, then we move forward, inshallah. But yeah, you're right. It can be very difficult, and we just have to kind of keep prevailing on our parents. Maybe bring other people to talk to them, you know, so that someone can talk some sense into them, saying, look, you really want to wait and then discover the hard way, you know, things didn't go the way you thought, because again, we're all paper. If I'm out here, I'm getting wet, you know, so I need to do something to maintain, you know, my structural integrity, to maintain myself in the way that I want to, you know, maintain myself. Other questions or comments?
It's not really a question, it's rather like reflecting on society right now. Sometimes it's not just the family's issue or problem where they're putting so much interest or the person proposing to their daughter versus it's really something like planted within our society for a man to think they cannot be in a marriage, a halal marriage, unless they're financially stable, even though the oh, I cannot do it. It's just because I don't have a period or I don't know what my future will look like. And I think that's something not a lot of people reflect on and overcomplicate marriage. Not that it's simple, but they overcomplicate it in their head and don't really try to reflect on it without putting the society into it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And part of it is the fitra of men, right? As men, we want to take care of our women. We want to take care of our families. And if I don't have a job, intrinsically I'm going to feel bad about, well, what kind of a man am I that I can't even provide for my wife? She wants something, she wants to go somewhere. I'm like, oh, sorry, there's no money. We have to, let me go back and ask my dad if he'll give me money so I can take you out. Right? It doesn't really kind of sit right. So, it can be, something that's a little bit difficult or challenging. Again, it depends on how it's structured, right? Maybe we talk to the parents and say, look, can you just give them a certain amount of an allowance, if you will, like every month, you each give them $1,000 plus you cover their room and board. That way they've got something to spend. So there can be ways around it, but those are factors that, individually, people may have some challenges, kind of coming, into a marriage, with that idea of not being able to support their family. Yes.
Okay, so I get the fact that you said the parents need to work with their children and make sure they're not letting them get married early and not, and not put all the rules on them. We have to be, you have to be this rich or you have to have
Protect myself. I'd rather be married in college, right? Which is actually nice because you have a lot more time with your spouse than when you're both having to be working full time and so forth. So, you need to be married in college. You're both committed to finishing college. Birth control is halal. So, sometimes that becomes a concern, right? Like, well, what if you got pregnant right away and then you have a baby, they're going to drop out? You say birth control is halal, and if Allah's already decreed that baby, guess what? That baby's coming for you no matter what. So, do you want that to be halal or haram baby, right? So, again, when we're talking about the decree, everyone's time is already written when you're born. Right? So it's not that the baby's not going to come if you don't get married, right? So that worry about, well, what if you got pregnant? Well, okay, then all the more reason, get married, and so forth. Because again, it's a principle of saying, look, we make our intention, we make our plan, but Allah is the best of planners. So, if the concern is, hey, you need to finish college, you need to get a job, absolutely. So I would not be asking for your daughter if I was not intent on finishing college. I absolutely want to be able to support her and support my family, and I have every intention of finishing college. And I would just love to do it with your daughter by my side, right? And so we need to have those conversations. But you're right. Some parents are very strict. Some parents, maybe, 5-6 times they're going to say no, no, no. But maybe it's the 7th time or the 8th time we come back to them. Maybe I'm not the right person, so maybe we bring another imam, maybe we bring somebody else that they know that they respect. Right? It's just a matter of bringing, different people, right? And the same thing happens with culture, right? I had a friend of mine who's African American. He wanted to marry, a girl who's Indo-Pak, and their father was very traditional in that sense, from back home, and he did not want to have his daughter marry an African American. Alhamdulillah, about 4 years later, with a whole bunch of conversations from a whole bunch of people, they were able to, get married. So they had to be, patient through that process. But the point is that people will oftentimes change, right? There's no such thing as 100% success, and sometimes, ultimately to the detriment of the parents quite often, they refuse, and then later on they're going, oh my gosh, how could this happen? And you're like, well, let me show you. Here's paper, here's water, right? And it's unfortunate, but a lot of times it's really just a matter of being patient with our parents, understanding that our parents have legitimate concerns, okay? And so we want to make sure that we're addressing those concerns to them. Okay, and again, being willing to kind of be there, have a conversation, bring other people they, respect their opinion as well, so we can, move things forward, inshallah, in positive ways with them. Yes.
So I know you said getting the parents involved and other things like that, but what about more of a college setting where you and the person you're interested in are more way farther away than any relatives or any type of contact with their immediate family? How would you go about going about that and still ensuring that not going into something too quickly, but also sharing that interest in someone?
Yeah. So that's a good question. I mean, if he's asking, like, if you don't have, say, immediate parents around, let's say you and the person you're interested in don't have family in town to kind of facilitate some of these meetings. Maybe you've got, you're here as a, you're both here from out of town, so you don't have any immediate family around, but you still want to kind of get to know them to determine if there might be a possibility, but you don't want things going too far, right? So I think that one of the best ways is, trying to stay actively involved in your MSA, in activities where you have a chance to kind of see the person, like in a broad setting, but you're not alone together. You're not spending that one-on-one time, but you do have a chance to see them, how they engage with others, how they interact. You might have some conversation. Maybe you guys are on a committee together. You have a chance to work together on something. So try to keep it to those kinds of environments. You do still get a very good sense of who somebody is, even by watching, or sometimes especially by watching how they interact with others. Right, it gives you an idea of the quality of person that is. From there, again, I'd say it's really too early to get parents involved in the sense of, potentially just kind of, opening that door of saying, here's someone who's a possibility. I know a lot of times parents are willing to, fly out, or, you can ask, if the girl happens to have maybe a brother or a male relative who might be able to, come out. Maybe she could say, hey, there's someone I'm potentially interested in, can you, come out over the break or something like that. Or if they're going home over the break, hey, fly out, to have a chance to meet the family and so forth. Again, just, looking to say, like from the beginning, hey, my interest is potentially marriage, so therefore, I want to pursue this in the right way. But I think you can generally get a pretty good idea, from seeing their engagement and interaction, on campus, domestic different activities, and so forth. Yes.
I'm gonna you said something about how it's too early for them to meet parents or something. But what if that really is the case? What if say I have a class with this boy and just we know each other from class, and then we decide, I don't know, just go for a walk in the park, have dinner or something. Would I really actually have to tell my dad he needs to come join us or something? Because a lot of people, even nowadays, in today's society, they would just be oh, it's are you serious? Are we this serious at right now? Do I have to meet your parents?
I mean, honestly, my response to that would be, if a guy said that to you, I'd be like, wait a minute. So what do you think, that you're not serious? That's not the direction you're thinking? I mean, why do you want to just take me out for dinner, right? I mean, seriously, there's no such thing called, I had some extra money, I was looking for somebody hungry. Hey, how about dinner, right? You look really hungry. Why not? Come on, I'll take you out for dinner, right? You think of the hadith, right? Intimate actions by intention, right? If I'm taking you out for dinner, I have some intention why I'm taking you out. Right? If I just want to feed people, Islamic Relief has a website I can donate, and I can feed a lot more people with my money, than taking somebody out for dinner, right? So, again, it's an idea of, and I'm not making fun of you, right? I'm saying, in all seriousness, what is the intentionality behind why we do something? Okay, so I understand what you're saying. In society, if somebody is saying, really, we just want to have, it's the first time I'm asking you for dinner, you want to bring your dad along, and that might scare them away, oh, forget it then. Hey, it's not necessarily a bad thing if they're scared away by that. It's okay, well, good, you have some sense of higher, but I guess what I'm saying is there's probably an intermediary step between going out for dinner by yourself with them and having just been with them in class, right? So in other words, why don't you say, hey, our MSA is having such and such an event, why don't you come? Okay, if they like you, they're going to come. It doesn't matter what the event is, right? That's the truth of it. If they like you, they're going to show up. So it gives you a chance now to see them interact again in a way. You can maybe have a chance to, have a few other words now outside of class with them, but you're still in a safer, if you will, public environment in the sense that there's other people around and so forth. Okay? And if they don't show up and they weren't interested in you, then why would you want to go out for dinner with them anyway? Right? Or you invite them to 2 or 3 different things and you see, are they willing to come? Do they engage, with other people? Right? And what is it about them, that I like? And do I see that when I see them in a different environment? When I see them interacting with other people, right? And so it gives you a way of evaluating somebody that's also going to be more objective. Because you're not going to be as objective sitting down necessarily one-on-one with them across the table, again, especially if you're interested in them, right? Because you weren't going to go out with them if you weren't interested, right? So in that other environment, you have a chance to see them in a different way, And then if you decide, you know what, yeah, they do seem, pretty cool and relaxed, and, they really do seem to like me and so forth, then you can kind of, put it out there to them to say, hey, why don't we go out sometime, or again, having shared that with your dad, see what he says, right? Hey, there's somebody at school, he's seeming pretty good. What do you think, right? And kind of see, what your father's approach would be on that, right? And again, I think it's important that we have these